In the spring of 146 BC, a Roman general named Scipio Aemilianus stood on a hill overlooking the Mediterranean. Below him, a great city was burning. The flames had been raging for 17 days. The smoke blackened the sky. Scipio had ordered the destruction. He was by any measure victorious. But as he watched the fires consume stone walls, temples, and harbors, he reportedly began to weep. Then he quoted Homer, the lines about the fall of Troy, and he said that he feared Rome might one day meet the same end. The city he was erasing was Carthage, and in that moment, the Roman conqueror understood something that most history books have since forgotten. Carthage had not been a weak enemy. It had been the richest, oldest, and most dangerous power the Mediterranean had ever seen. Rome had won, but only just. This is the story of how that empire was born, and why Rome spent a century trying to make sure no one would remember its name. The story does not begin in North Africa. It begins 900 kilometers to the east, on the coast of modern-day Lebanon. This was the land of the Phoenicians. They were not conquerors, they were merchants and navigators. While other powers fought over dusty fields, the Phoenicians mastered the sea. They discovered how to use the pole star for navigation. They built ships with keeled hulls, a technology that allowed them to sail in open water rather than hugging the coast. And they created a writing system of just 22 letters, the alphabet. The Greeks took it, added vowels, and passed it to the Romans. You are reading a descendant of the Phoenician alphabet right now. Their most famous product was a purple dye extracted from the murex snail. It took 10,000 snails to produce 1 gram of dye. It became the color of kings. The Greeks called them Phoenices, the purple people. By 900 BC, the Phoenician city of Tyre was the commercial capital of the ancient world. But pressure was building. The Assyrian Empire to the east demanded ever heavier tribute. So the Phoenicians looked west, to the uncharted waters of the central Mediterranean. They needed resupply points, safe harbors, and access to silver and tin. Between roughly 850 and 800 BC, they established a network of trading posts across Cyprus, Malta, Sicily, Sardinia, and the North African coast. One of those posts, on a peninsula in the Gulf of Tunis, was different. It had 2 natural harbors, defensible hills, and sat at the narrowest point of the Mediterranean, just 140 kilometers from Sicily. The Phoenicians called it Carthage, the new city. We call it Carthage. The traditional founding date, recorded by the Greek historian Timaeus around 300 BC, is 814 BC. That is 38 years before the first Olympiad. Modern archaeology has found no permanent settlement layers at Carthage earlier than about 760 BC. Historians debate the gap, but the name, the location, and the cultural DNA are unmistakably Phoenician. One legend, told by the Roman poet Virgil, says the city was founded by a Tyrian princess named Elissa, or Dido, as the Romans called her. She fled Tyre after her brother murdered her husband. Arriving on the North African coast, she bargained with the local Berber chieftain for as much land as an ox hide could cover. Then, she cut the hide into the thinnest possible strips and laid them end to end, encircling the hill of Byrsa, the citadel of the future city. Whether the princess was real or legend, the date stuck, and the city that grew from that hill would become something Tyre never imagined. For its first 2 centuries, Carthage was a loyal colony. It sent annual tribute to the temple of Melkart in Tyre. It worshipped the same gods, Baal, Hammon, and Tanit. Then, in the 580s BC, the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar besieged Tyre for 13 years. Tyre survived, but never recovered its dominance. Later, Alexander the Great destroyed the mainland city in 332 BC. The old Phoenician homeland was now under foreign rule. Carthage, however, was far to the west, beyond the reach of Eastern empires. It began to act independently. By 500 BC, Carthage had become the leader of the Phoenician colonies in the western Mediterranean, a position it enforced with a growing navy. The secret to Carthage's rise was not just trade, it was silver. The Phoenicians had founded the city of Gadir, modern Cadiz in Spain, as early as 1100 BC. Behind Gadir lay the Rio Tinto mines, one of the richest sources of silver in the ancient world. By 700 BC, the silver flowing out of Spain was so abundant that it actually depressed the value of silver bullion in the Assyrian economy. Carthage placed its own magistrates, called suffet, in these Spanish colonies. The silver paid for mercenaries, Numidian cavalry from North Africa, Balearic slingers, Iberian infantry, and Gallic warriors. Unlike Rome, which fought with citizen soldiers, Carthage fought with cash. As long as the silver flowed, the army was unbeatable. By 400 BC, Carthage controlled western Sicily, Sardinia, Corsica, the Balearic Islands, and a strip of the Spanish coast. Its population reached nearly 500,000 people, making it one of the largest cities in the ancient world. The Greek historian Polybius would later write that Carthage had the best harbors, the richest hinterland, and the greatest walls of any city he knew. The centerpiece was the Kothon, a dual harbor system. The outer rectangle was for merchant ships. The inner circle was a military port, surrounded by 220 individual ship sheds, each housing a quinquereme, the battleship of its day. A central island held the admiral's pavilion. From the sea, you could not see the warships. They were hidden behind high stone walls. This was the superpower that Rome would one day face. But at this point, Rome was still a regional player on the Italian peninsula. The two powers had treaties, the first dated to around 509 BC, that divided their spheres of influence peacefully. Rome stayed out of the sea, Carthage stayed out of Italy. For 2 centuries it worked. What broke the peace was an island, Sicily. In 264 BC, a group of Italian mercenaries called the Mamertines seized the Sicilian city of Messana, right in the strait between Italy and the island. When they were threatened by the Greek king of Syracuse, the Mamertines appealed for help from both Rome and Carthage. Rome saw an opportunity to prevent Carthage from controlling the strait and blockading the Italian coast. In a move that some historians call a deliberate provocation, Rome sent an army across the water. Carthage responded. The First Punic War had begun, and Rome was not ready. Carthage had the largest navy in the Mediterranean. Rome had almost no navy. What Rome had was determination and a talent for reverse engineering. According to Polybius, the Romans captured a grounded Carthaginian quinquereme and used it as a template. In just 60 days, they built 100 warships. They also invented the corvus, a boarding bridge with a spike on the end. This device could be dropped onto an enemy ship's deck, locking it in place. This turned naval battles into land battles, where Roman soldiers had the advantage. The war lasted 23 years. Rome lost hundreds of ships to storms. They were famously bad sailors, but they never stopped building more. In 241 BC, a Roman fleet destroyed the Carthaginian navy at the Battle of the Aegates Islands. Carthage surrendered. It gave up Sicily, paid a massive indemnity, and limped home. But the war did not end there. The deeper damage came next. Carthage could not pay its mercenaries. From 241 to 238 BC, those mercenaries, joined by rebellious Libyan subjects, fought a savage war against Carthage itself. The Romans called it the Truceless War. Both sides committed atrocities. Carthage survived only because of a brilliant general named Hannibal Barca. Hamilcar had fought the Romans to a standstill in Sicily. He accepted the peace only under orders, and he was angry. He watched as Rome, taking advantage of Carthage's weakness, seized the islands of Sardinia and Corsica. That humiliation would never be forgotten. Hamilcar took his 9-year-old son to Spain. According to the Roman historian Livy, the boy begged to go on campaign. Hamilcar agreed, but asked the boy to swear an oath. The boy placed his hand on a sacrificial altar and swore eternal hatred of Rome. That boy's name was Hannibal. In Spain, Hamilcar built a new power base. He exploited the silver mines, recruited native Iberian warriors, and founded a new capital called Carthago Nova. When Hamilcar died in battle in 229 BC, his son-in-law, Hasdrubal the Fair, continued the work. Then in 221 BC, command passed to Hannibal. He was 26 years old. 2 years later, Hannibal provoked a war. He besieged and captured the city of Saguntum, which Rome considered an ally. Rome demanded that Hannibal be handed over. Carthage refused. The Second Punic War had begun. What Hannibal did next was so audacious that the Romans never believed it possible. Instead of waiting to be attacked, he marched his army overland. He crossed the Pyrenees, moved through southern Gaul, and in the autumn of 218 BC, he crossed the Alps. The Alpine crossing is one of the most extraordinary military feats in history. Ancient sources disagree on which pass he used, but the cost is clear. Hannibal started with approximately 38,000 infantry, 8,000 cavalry, and up to 37 war elephants. When he emerged on the Italian side, he had about 20,000 infantry and 6,000 cavalry. Almost all of the elephants were dead, killed by cold, avalanches, and mountain tribes. But he was in Italy, and he was ready. Over the next 2 years, Hannibal fought 3 of the most devastating battles Rome ever lost. At the Trebia River, he ambushed a Roman army and destroyed it. At Lake Trasimene, he hid his soldiers in the hills above a fog-covered lake and annihilated another Roman force, killing the consul in the process. Then came Cannae. In August 216 BC, the Romans fielded their largest army ever, perhaps 70 to 80,000 men. Hannibal had around 50,000. He placed his weakest troops, Gauls and Spaniards, in the center of his line, bowing them forward. His best African infantry held the wings. His superb Numidian and Spanish cavalry anchored both flanks. As the Roman legions pushed forward, the Carthaginian center slowly retreated, drawing the Romans deeper into a crescent shape. Then the African infantry on the wings wheeled inward. The cavalry, having routed their Roman counterparts, returned and hit the Roman rear. The Romans were surrounded on all sides. By nightfall, between 50,000 and 70,000 Roman soldiers lay dead. Among them were 80 Roman senators. The consul Lucius Aemilius Paulus was killed. His colleague escaped. It was the single worst military disaster in Roman history. The Roman historian Livy wrote that the city fell into such panic that people believed Hannibal would march on Rome at dawn, but he did not. Hannibal's cavalry commander Maharbal reportedly told him, "You know how to win a victory, Hannibal, but you do not know how to use one." Why did Hannibal not march on Rome? The answer is not simple. He had no siege equipment, his army was exhausted, and crucially, he had no supply line. He was deep in enemy territory, waiting for reinforcements from Carthage that never came in sufficient numbers. The Carthaginian Senate, dominated by factions that had never fully supported Hannibal, prioritized other theaters: Sicily, Sardinia, and Spain. They did not trust the Barcid family's power. Political jealousy as much as Roman resilience saved Rome. Rome, meanwhile, adopted a new strategy. A general named Quintus Fabius Maximus refused to fight another pitched battle. Instead, he followed Hannibal's army, harassed his foragers, burned his supplies, and avoided engagement. Fabius was mocked as the delayer, but his strategy worked. Hannibal spent 15 years in Italy, won every single battle, and never received enough support to finish the war. In 204 BC, a Roman general named Publius Cornelius Scipio, who had studied Hannibal's tactics, invaded North Africa directly. Hannibal was recalled to defend Carthage. At the Battle of Zama in 202 BC, Scipio defeated Hannibal. It was the first time Hannibal had ever lost a battle. Carthage was stripped of its navy, its empire, and its independence. It became a client state of Rome. But here is the part that most history lessons skip. During the 50 years after Zama, Carthage did something remarkable. Without an empire, without an army, the Carthaginians rebuilt their economy through agriculture and trade. They paid off the 50-year war indemnity early. Their city grew prosperous again. Roman merchants visited Carthage and reported back, "The city is thriving." That prosperity terrified the Romans. One senator, Cato the Elder, became obsessed. He ended every speech he gave, on any topic, with the same 8 words: "Ceterum censeo Carthaginem esse delendam." Furthermore, I consider that Carthage must be destroyed. In 149 BC, Rome found a pretext. Carthage had responded militarily to encroachments by Numidia, a Roman ally. Rome declared war. The Romans demanded that Carthage hand over all its weapons, hundreds of thousands of catapults and swords. Carthage complied. Then Rome revealed its final demand. The citizens must abandon their city and move at least 15 kilometers inland. For a maritime trading civilization, that was a death sentence. Carthage refused. And with no weapons and no navy, the city prepared for a siege that would last 3 years. What happened next is almost impossible to believe. The Carthaginians melted down gold and silver temple ornaments to cast new swords. Women reportedly cut off their hair to make bowstrings for catapults. The city became a factory of desperation. The Romans assaulted the walls repeatedly and were thrown back. In the spring of 146 BC, the Roman general Scipio Aemilianus launched the final assault. His soldiers fought street by street for 6 days. The Carthaginians defended every house, every temple, every rooftop. On the 7th day, the survivors were taken prisoner. They were sold into slavery. Then the Romans systematically destroyed the city. They burned it for 17 days. They tore down the walls, the harbors, the Barca hill. Later, Roman writers added that they sowed the earth with salt. But that detail appears centuries later and is almost certainly a legend. The actual destruction was thorough enough without it. Scipio Aemilianus, the conqueror, watched the flames and wept. He reportedly quoted Homer. Then he added his own fear, that one day the same thing might happen to Rome. The Romans declared the site of Carthage accursed, but they could not erase the Carthaginian legacy as completely as they wished. The Punic language survived in North Africa for centuries. St. Augustine of Hippo noted that rural people still spoke Punic. The agricultural manual by Mago was so respected that the Roman Senate ordered it translated. It became a standard text for Roman farmers, the alphabet that the Phoenicians had perfected. You are reading its distant descendant right now. Carthage was destroyed, but the world it helped build never truly disappeared. So what is the lesson of Carthage? It is not simply that Rome won and Carthage lost. It is that the contest between them was the closest thing to a fair fight between superpowers. One was a land-based republic of citizen soldiers. The other was a sea-based commercial oligarchy of mercenaries and merchants. For over a century, they fought for control of the Mediterranean. Carthage had the better generals, Hannibal, Hamilcar, Hasdrubal. It had more money. It had a better navy for most of that time. What it lacked was the one thing Rome had in seemingly infinite supply: a population of citizens who would fight and die not for pay, but for the idea of Rome itself. After Cannae, when Rome had lost 1 in 5 adult males, the Senate refused to even discuss surrender. They called up 17-year-olds and freed slaves to fill the ranks. Carthage, by contrast, relied on mercenaries whose loyalty was tied to the paymaster's gold. When the gold ran low, the mercenaries turned on their own employers, as happened in the Truceless War. That structural weakness, not a lack of courage or ingenuity, is why Carthage ultimately fell. And that is why Scipio wept as he watched the flames. He knew that Rome had won not because it was morally superior, but because it was structurally more resilient, and he feared that resilience might one day be lost. The ruins of Carthage still lie under a suburb of modern Tunis. Tourists can walk the foundations of the Barca, the circular harbor that once held 220 warships, and the Tophet where thousands of urns have been excavated. The debate over Carthaginian child sacrifice, mentioned by hostile Roman sources and hinted at by the archaeology, remains unresolved. But what is not in dispute is that Carthage was a sophisticated, cosmopolitan, and fiercely independent civilization that the Romans feared so much they tried to erase it from memory. They failed. Carthage's story survived. In the alphabet we use, in the agricultural techniques Rome preserved, and in the very act of writing history against the grain. Because every time we ask, what if Rome had lost? We are really asking, what did we lose when Carthage burned? And the answer, buried under 17 days of flame, is a world that might have been very different. One where the great power of the Mediterranean was not a land-hungry empire of legions, but a seafaring republic of merchants, silver and purple sails. A world where the new city never fell. That world did not happen. But for 100 years it came terrifyingly close.